Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are crime dramas. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about The Cleaning Lady Season 4, Episode 4. Great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So, bringing back that thing that the doctor told Tony in episode 1. In episode 2, the beginning of episode 2 of, yeah, don't let it keep you up at night. The whole Rex thing did, regardless of it, if it was out of mercy or not for her. It's like, I still murdered a guy. And even Fiona, she can't help alleviate that. Tony can't get over her own guilt with that. And obviously, she deals with it a little bit with her patient this episode, Patty, who is pregnant and, obviously, DuPont does not have the best bedside manner. So obviously he's looking at it like, oh, this is an American eating, getting bigger, and that could help, interfere with the health of their child. And obviously, Patty was like, yeah, like I was on a keto diet, this and that. But she's like, the moment I got pregnant, I just kind of cut loose and ate whatever I wanted to. And she's like, I know my husband would never kind of like blame me for anything, but she can't help but feel responsible. Like whatever happens to my baby is on me. And Tony's like, it's not your fault. The condition, like the doctor was saying she had, is something that even without the circumstances being what they are, like that could just happen irregardless of like her eating situation more recently. And, obviously trying to alleviate her guilt, which obviously Tony's like, I know guilt, so trust me. And I love that woman being like, oh, you're kind of like my angel. And obviously, sadly, she ended up having a seizure. But Tony caught that soon enough because she's like, obviously Luca had seizures and stuff too, so she's like, I learned the signs ahead of time. So it's like because of that, they were luckily able to save Patty's life. And it turns into this complicated thing later on of, well, if we are put in a situation, whose life do we prioritize, Patty's or the baby's? And the husband's like, I can't. That should be Patty's decision. He's like, yeah, but she's not in a position to get an answer as our significant other. You are the one who can make that decision. You kind of power of attorney in this situation. Because he's like, if I prioritize saving my wife, she'll never forgive me for us losing our baby. But Tony's like, don't worry, she'll understand. She knows how much you love her. So luckily, it doesn't turn into that issue. Both of them come out okay. I'm like, okay, good. But I was just like, I just had a feeling like the sad setup was going to be Patty was going to survive, but the baby wouldn't. I felt like that was the direction it was going to go, but luckily it didn't. So it's kind of like the worst case scenario thing didn't happen. So it all works out in the end. But DuPont is actually making a point to reach out to Tony. He's like, yeah, take the, residents, and kind of we go drinking a little bit, which I'm like, okay, so we're kind of pseudo in that same ballpark as I brought up like previously, where I was like, I figured Tony and Armand was going to be more of a thing, which it was, but then I thought like, I don't know, maybe there's going to be a Tony and Garrett thing. Once again, tug between the angel and devil on your shoulder, kind of in that same boat this episode, because of the whole DuPont, but also Jorge. But the crux of this episode revolves around the fact is that the DA has come to Tony because Rex's body was found. We find out the guy that Jorge killed last episode, his people were petty and they dumped his body at a casino just to draw it all back to Jorge, because it's like if it ends up with Jorge getting locked up, more power to him, because it's their revenge. Even though Home Dude was the one that took a shot at Jorge and failed, and Jorge killed him. Like, he was in the right, but they do have they are in their own right to get their revenge in its own way, which is like they're the ones that set our characters down this path, like Tony Giddy. And Tony held her own against the DA initially, like his initial questioning. I did think it was interesting. It's not till he came back later with a search warrant that Tony actually did went to Armand, because she was back, not Armand, Jorge, because she was backed into a corner. And I was like, ugh. Because even Jorge's like, well, why didn't you come to me sooner? The moment the DA came to you, she's like, well, why didn't you give me a heads up that the DA would be even looking in my direction? Because they can because they got Rex's text from like the money, because they were in fact, so they were the ones who were watching Rex's house because they probably, I guess, already knew, like, this was before his body dropped, but I guess they already had their eye on him because I guess they were keeping an eye on everyone related to Sin Cara and this guy who's coming in to a job, and they, I guess, got access to his text messages, like, to be on the lookout, staking out his house already, and they're the ones who caught Tony. I mean, her dropping off the 50 grand isn't necessarily illegal, but then it's like, well, that 50 grand is exactly what he was getting paid for a job. Ain't that a funny coinkydink? So yeah, it's just like, it's everything's going wrong, especially because Jorge met with like that chief from the land and was like, yeah, he got access to the road. Because obviously it's like, this is, my wife wanted me out of the cartel game. She died before I could make that happen. This is my way to kind of owe that back to her and make this real. Once again, build a proper, legitimate, non-cartel related legacy for my family. He'd still be tied to the cartel because he is making business for them, and even when he tries to exit it, he's still going to be the head of the cartel. He's trying to present a certain front, but like, he will always be neck deep in the cartel because he's trying to legitimize the business, so it protects them even more from the cartel side, but it also leaves stuff where like his legitimate business can never be like tied to any cartel stuff. So his daughter has a legacy, but the mineral thing is also benefiting the cartel, not unless it's a thing of Jorge does legitimately mean that, like, hey, I'm going to build this business off of the lithium. Also the cartel people, I mean, I guess that's almost going to be like his buyout all around, maybe, because he does seem legitimate in his like his dealings of, oh, I'm going to legitimize this business, and but then like he's also got the cartel involved, so that's why I'm like, not unless it's supposed to be a buyout of him like selling out Sin Cara, or would he try to give it back to Ramona to run it while she's in prison? And like I said, it seems like he's still going to do both things, but I don't know. Either way, that all, like, he got a step forward. It's like, now we just got to get the right people to sign off on things, but now the problem is this whole thing shoots them in the foot because they don't know what the DA necessarily had. Because it's like, yeah, we got people in the DA's office, push them hard to try and, deal with this. But yeah, I'd almost wonder, because they tied the drugs from that Tony used to kill Rex back to like her hospital, which I'd almost wondered. I was like, did she bring that from the hospital? I mean, that's the benefit of working with, from the hospital, having that hospital job. You can get an easier access to medicine you need like that. But because I was almost wondering, like, obviously the Sin Cara and all of them set up stuff for Tony to tend and all the equipment. So I wondered if they brought the meds too and she just used that. But it's like, no, it was stuff she specifically brought from the hospital. So I was like, damn. Because I was almost hoping like, well, if they bought it somewhere else, it wouldn't have any direct ties to Tony. But the concern was there. So it's like, nah, it definitely came from her job. So now she's backed into a corner too, and so is Jorge. And they have that sit down where she's just like, what do I do? And he's like, because she's like, I'm just getting on the stand and lie if they try to like get me to testify against you. Jorge, being the lawyer that he is, he cross-examines her and he pushes her into a corner where it's like, people can say they'll lie until the pressure comes on. And then it's just like, because you're going to have to, like, even if you pre-plan stuff, when a lawyer's coming at you with everything they got because they know they've got you dead to rights and they know all it takes is a slip up, and especially in front of a jury and stuff, like, you're toast. So now the question is, well, what do they do about Tony? The question is, hey, Tony's got to go. Which Jorge, to his defense, did try to keep Tony around. It's like, hey, he knows what it's like as a single parent. It's like, yo, she has a son, and it's like, like the guy's like, hey, kids are strong. They persevere. He's like, you should know, which is also kind of complicated considering like, well, he's in the exact same situation as Tony, but I think it was probably more so speaking from the perspective of like, not having your parents around and you growing strong and finding your way that way. But yeah, Jorge did not want to take out Tony because he does like Tony, and he does care for Tony. It's like, she helped you out a lot last season. She's been there through and through. She literally saved your life from getting assassinated in episode 1. But the problem is, it's like, this is his dream and his ambition so much as writing. Like, is he willing to put everything on the line for this one person? So you got to give him credit there. But later on, literally at the end of the episode, Tony's like, were they actually going to take me to a safe house? And Jorge doesn't say anything because she knows, like, okay, You were gonna they were gonna kill me, and you were gonna let that happen. He didn't want it to happen, but that's still something you got to deal with and be okay with. Like, yeah, Jorge didn't agree with it, didn't like it, but he okayed it. Like, he didn't really have much room. Sure, you can if and it, all that. You can just be like, but this, but that. But at the end of the day, he still signed off on it. So how do you come to terms with that? You thought you know what it is. You're with the cartel and stuff. And she even says later on, this is kind of like the price she has to pay for her decision. Because she's like, yeah, I'm, regardless of my reasoning, even if I was thinking I was doing it being an angel of mercy, I still killed a person. So, for her, it's like, I'm damned, I did a bad thing and I have to pay the consequences for it. So, and obviously the DA called her up, even gave her the picture of the doc. Is like, yeah, she did not know Doc has been dead. The moment you got the job, they took Doc out. Literally, the guy that killed the Doc is literally like right across from you, being like, oh, do you know why? What is this, like nurses or whatever wear green? It's because it's easier to see the blood. I'm like, you sound like such a fucking associate. Because he's like, oh, like green is the opposite of red, which I'm like, is it? Maybe like from a color theory or color wheel perspective it is. I don't know. Because in my head, but that's just me, like just the red versus blue of it all, where it's just, I mean, in general, not just like literal red versus blue, like Rooster Teeth red versus blue, but like just red and blue being opposites to each other always. I always figured they were opposites to each other, but probably like maybe from a color theory thing, maybe green is, I don't know. It doesn't really matter. But yeah. Tony was struggling not to get into that vehicle because she knew what time it was. It's like, oh, it really is going down like that. Because even then, it's like, oh, you'll stay at a safe house. It's like, I have a child. You wouldn't make me stay at a safe house, like, being away from my child. You know how important like there's just like, oh, we got to move quickly. But it's like, I was like, how are you going to get out of this? Like, is this like, are they going to set someone else to take the fall? Like, how is this going to play out? Did not expect Tony to be like, let's get married. I was like, well, not having to testify against each other is a powerful thing for spouses. So go down to the courthouse, fee as their witness, pay off some people in line so they can jump the line. Because if they don't, the DA's got people on the way. Because it's like, as long as that certificate isn't signed, then it still doesn't count. So fake Elvis is in front of him officiating the wedding, calling Jorge George. He's like, oh, George Sanchez. It even says it later on, George Sanchez, and Jorge's like, it's Jorge Sanchez. I just think that's funny. He got Jorge's names wrong, but like, I mean, Tony's, yeah, it's spelled differently, but it's still Tony enough that I guess it's okay. But it's like, come on. Either way, the marriage goes on. I should also know, I mean, Elodie Young is very beautiful regardless anyway. So, I mean, we don't have to, but she looks extra beautiful in that wedding dress. It's actually a really cute wedding dress. I'm like, I don't know. There's something like beautiful and cute about like a short wedding dress like that. I don't know why. I was just like, oh, that's really cute. And I love that it's like, oh, they need the kiss to seal the deal. And it's like, man, we are on a time limit. And Fee's jamming right beside Fake Elvis. And they kiss. And you see that because Fee's concerned because she's like, yo, marriage means a lot. Like, this is just going to dive you deeper into the cartel. But for Tony, it's like, I literally have no other choice. It's this or death. And once again, she feels like, yeah, this is going to be the price I have to pay for my actions and my decisions. So, with that all said and done, though, the look on Fiona's face was just kind of like, I don't know if she was kind of feeling like, oh, this sucks that Tony's in this situation. Like, Tony kind of likes Jorge, but not like that way. Like, once again, I wonder if the situation was what it was. Like, if, its storyline played out, I mean, well, if life played out obviously differently. And, Armand could have still been around. Once again, real world, stuff aside. I wonder, would that storyline have ever gotten to that point? Because I brought it up previously. Like, could there be a Jorge and Tony? But I'm like, yeah, it's weird because that's Armand's cousin. So it's just, but I mean, once again, this situation forced as it is. But Armand, I mean, I did it again. Sorry. Jorge does like Tony. So it is a thing of, it's a business interaction. Maybe it'll be a thing of, yeah, it's business, but eventually it turns into something more. It's gonna be interesting because you are legally married. It's like, well, technically now makes his daughter uh your daughter, and your son his. But it also benefits you too, because it's like, Jorge was already willing to go so far for you as a mom and as a mother, a single mother, and Luca and everything. Now he's extra motivated because it's like, well, that is my wife. So how are the kids going to handle that? How are you going to broach that conversation with your kids? It's going to be so interesting to see how Tony handles that. If she says anything at all. I mean, Fee knows, but are you going to tell Chris, Jazz, and Luca? What about JD? Are you going to fill him on that family situation? Especially because he's trying to make things work between him and Fiona. So, oh yeah, also apparently the DA and Jorge have had history. They've had run-ins in the past. So it's like, oh, cool. That's why he has such a personal vendetta. Why he's like, so like raring to go against Sincata. I mean, obviously a lot of stuff came to a head last season with the Ramona of it all, but the Sincata still stands, and Jorge's still standing at the charge. So it's interesting because I brought up that whole point of like, will there be like a federal, like, will there be a cop angle to it? Because we've always had the FBI angle up to this time, but now it's like, well, it's not the FBI we were worried about anymore. Now it's the DA. So it's like, okay. So we're still getting that law enforcement side of the story. Probably won't be as prominent like a Garrett or, and even though he popped in here and there, he's still pretty recurring throughout season 3, the whole Jeremy of it all, and obviously Russo. So obviously this DA's filling that void. So that's going to be interesting, as he's going to be so far up Tony and Jorge's asses to kind of bust them on all of this. Because it's like, yeah, if it's revealed that this marriage came about as a means of dodging testimony, I didn't know that could be used against you. Like, because how do you really test the legitimacy of the man? Well, he even tested himself, and like, oh, what's Jorge's middle name? She's like, something in Spanish. When's his birthday? She's like, so yeah. I wonder will they do anything like try to learn more about each other just so they can pass any like future tests that might come up in trial or something, or be in question about the legitimacy of their marriage. I don't know. Maybe they'll never deal with that, but I'm curious if that's something the show will ever tackle. But yeah. Circling over to Fee, she obviously still doing her ride share, made quite a bit of money, but the problem is Home Dude ended up taking like half the money. She walked away with more of the percentage because she walked away with like 55 to like his 45, but he's still got his cut. And it's like, yeah, I kind of do more on my end, and I love Fee's way to rebel against that was just to take his tacos. I was like, yeah, got to get some slight. When he's like, hey, you're going to have to pay for that. It's like, no. It's like, if anything, take it out of the like cut you took from me. But yeah, like Fee's just struggling, and obviously JD's like, yo, I can move in with you, but she doesn't want that because, yeah, she loves JD, and it's like, we could try and make this work again, but the problem is she wants to prove, not to other people, it's more so to herself that she can do this. It's just a thing of, I don't want to fully have to just rely on people. It's interesting because it's like, I feel like she's willing to like let a lot of that slide when it comes to Tony. It's interesting that but it's like, it's a different family thing, I think, with Tony versus JD. Even though we're all a family, it's still a thing of, it's a, yo, you're my sister, even though it's like, yeah, we're in-laws, but it's still like, yo, you're my sister. And, that goes a little deeper than like the whole like JD of it, even though it's like he's a father and child. I don't know. Obviously, like, she's always been a little more like, I don't know if accepting's the right word, but like she's always more willing to kind of go through the mud and tough it out or whatever with Tony. So that's why I'm wondering, is that the thing she's getting hung up on? But I mean, even JD himself said like, everyone knows you can handle it on their own except for you, Fee. So I'm curious, is it just a pride thing that she doesn't want to get JD involved? Because she's like, I don't want to just be saved. I want to be able to support my family on my own because I want to prove myself. Once again, not to other people, well, to some people who look down upon her, but it is also a pride thing of, I also want to prove it to myself. She did get a cleaning gig, and her and her squad did a great job. And then the lady accused her of stealing. I was like, oh my god. I was like, it's like, is this lady going to be a racist piece of shit? And like, she like set this all up just so she could get the cleaning done for free or whatever. But it turns out no, it was like $1.75 was left out. Come, I get it. It's the principle of it all, homie. It was $1.75, but it's because one of the workers picked it up and is like, "Yeah, I'm sorry, I forgot to put it back." And but they can't say anything at this point after being accused of stealing, because now it's going to look like, "Oh, you're only returning it now after you got busted." There's no winning that. Sophie kind of got a little bit of revenge, and she took a picture of that lady's ID, so she'll probably sell it to home dude, and it's like, "Hey, I will." That's going to be interesting to see if that's what Fee does, kind of adding a little more criminality to her cleaning business. It's like, oh, you need IDs? I can get you IDs. Like, I'll clean people's places and then get their IDs. Problem is, if that is where that storyline goes, problem is eventually it's going to be a common denominator. It's interesting that every time this cleaning service goes to these people's houses, these people's IDs get used. So that could also end up being the DA's way to get to Tony, is through Fee, because that has happened before where Fee gets used as leverage against Tony. It would be the first time. But obviously Fee's also not too fond of the situation Tony finds herself in with the whole Jorge of it all. So, because also Russo kind of put her in that same position last season, didn't she? I can't remember. Like, I mean, obviously, she's coming after like Nadia and Fee, but either way. So that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. We also had the Chris of it all, where Chris goes to visit Camilla, meant to be a surprise. The entire time, I'm like, because he's surprising her, I'm like, don't tell me she has another dude. I was like, please don't tell me. And like the way they set it up, she's sitting on some steps waiting for, like, oh yeah, your surprise is going to be there. And he's rolling up. I was like, oh God, she's going to have a dude, isn't she? And lo and behold, a dude walks. Because I was like, maybe the situation isn't what we, and immediately start kissing. I was like, well, never mind. I was about to say, maybe Chris is going to misread the situation. I was like, well, that's pretty hard to miss, like them cuddling like that and hugging. And you're just like, oh man, that sucks. It's super effed up in a lot of ways because it's complicated, because it's like, well, all that Chris and his family kind of did for her and her mom, to kind of do that is kind of effed up. But also at the same time, it's like she doesn't, even though it's like you do kind of owe Chris, but it's like, just because I owe you doesn't mean I should have to be with you just because you helped me out in that situation. But it's an icky situation. Like, looking at it from that perspective, it is icky. It's just like you have to be with me because I basically helped save you. It's kind of grody, that perspective. And I'm not saying Chris necessarily has that. I don't know if he'll say that to Camilla, but it's still just kind of like, it's there. So it's just kind of, but like I said, that's kind of an icky way to look at it. But, so, and he doesn't tell his mom about it. So he goes hang out with his boy, and they're like drifting cars, and he's dancing in the middle, and his friend ends up recording it. So yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see where that goes. Once again, I should still look into it. The actor who plays Chris, like, is he really big into dancing, or is that just something like, he just happened to be a dancer and they wrote that into the storyline, or did they write that into the story and the actor kind of had to work on that? I don't know. It's chicken or the egg type of situation with that. But I'm curious to see where that storyline goes. What Chris is going to do now. It's like, right, wanted to get his GED, but he was focused on Camilla. But now that's kind of going down the toilet. You lost a little motivation. But dancing seems to be like the way to kind of work through like what you're going through and what you're feeling. And obviously he's killing it. But it's going to be interesting to see where that goes as well. And whether that just continues to be its own side thing, or whether that ends up bleeding over to the plot. Because Fee's situation, because she's doing some illegal stuff herself, definitely feels like it won't directly tie to the Jorge and Tony of it all, but it definitely feels like it will be a domino that might knock stuff down in that direction. And speaking of Tony, like I brought up DuPont earlier, that complicated nature of like her work versus like her other work, that divide and complication is going to get even more complicated, especially if like DuPont really starts liking Tony and there's something there, but it's like, hey, I'm married now, and it's like, oh, that kind of came out of nowhere. He was softening towards her. We'll see if they even touch on any romantic stuff, but yeah, maybe, and if they do, like I said, how complicated it'll be now that Jorge's in their life, but also like how much does that dynamic change? Do they just purely keep it business, or does it actually eventually turn into something actually romantic? I don't know, because they're basically each other's saving grace for now. So, but once again, still got to hold into her head the fact is, like for Jorge, it's like you could always be used against me, but he trusts Tony enough. But also, Tony just learned you would have let them put a bullet in my head. So, like I said, it's interesting to see where this will take us going forward. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. To the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.